Tonight, violent uprising. Bangladesh descends into chaos as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigns and flees the country, with protesters invading the presidential palace. Escalating attacks. Israel levels new blows against Gaza following stabbings in Tel Aviv. Down to debate. The Trump and Harris camps throw taunts at each other as the second debate date looms ever closer. And cruising cars. Amphibious automobiles frolic in the canals of Amsterdam as a last hurrah before curtain call. All that and more as World News Tonight starts right now.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here is Anuradhi Vikramasinghe.
Good evening, you're joining us World News Tonight. With the start of the week, we have lots of updates to bring to you on key stories that developed over the weekend. And we begin with updates on the unrest over in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and fled the country after anti-government protests in which hundreds of people have been killed. Reports say she and her sister have been taken by army helicopter to safety.
Television footage showed thousands of protesters storming her official residence, shouting slogans, pumping fists and showing victory signs from what was one of the most protected buildings in the country. Army Chief General Waqar-uz-Zaman announced Hasina's resignation in a televised address to the nation and said an interim government would be formed. Media reports said Hasina was flown in a military helicopter with her sister and was headed to India. She had landed in Agratala, the capital of India's northeastern state of Tripura, across the eastern border of Bangladesh. Student activists called for a march on the capital Dhaka in a defiance of nationwide curfew to press Hasina to resign, a day after deadly clashes across the country killed nearly 100 people. About 150 people were killed in protests last month. Bangladesh has been engulfed by the protests and violence that began last month after student groups demanded scrapping of a controversial quota system in the government jobs.
Over in the Israel-Hamas conflict now, Israeli airstrikes hit schools and a hospital in Gaza, killing at least 35 people. According to Palestinian officials, the Israeli military said it hit Hamas military targets.
Israeli airstrikes hit several locations in Gaza on Sunday, including this tent encampment inside a hospital in the central part of the enclave. The attacks killed at least 35 people and wounded dozens of others, according to Gaza health officials. Video showed groups of Palestinians throwing buckets of water and using fire extinguishers to put out a fire that occurred after the strike. The Israeli military said it was targeting a militant who conducted terror activities, and that secondary explosions were identified, indicating weapons were present in the area. The hospital compound is crowded with thousands of people displaced by fighting in other parts of Gaza, including Saeed al-Daya. He said people were sleeping when the rocket struck, setting the tent on fire. A woman was killed after getting hit by shrapnel in the back. A separate Israeli airstrike hit 2 schools in Gaza City, Palestinian officials said, while the Israeli military said it struck a Hamas military compound embedded in the schools. Footage showed bodies scattered inside the yard of one of the schools as residents rushed to assist the injured. The attacks come the day after ceasefire talks in Cairo ended without result. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blamed Hamas for a long-stalled deal to end the war in Gaza and release Israeli hostages. He said Hamas has not agreed to the most basic terms of the outline, while Israel has not added a single demand to the outline. Netanyahu said Hamas is the one demanding to include tens of changes. Israel is bracing for a serious escalation following the assassination of Hamas's leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran on Wednesday. Netanyahu was due to convene special security discussions late on Sunday, a defense official said, following threats of retaliation from Iran and others, while U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was talking to leaders in the Middle East, seeking to calm tensions, according to the State Department.
We're moving to the UK now, where violent demonstrations involving anti-immigration groups have broken out in towns and cities across Britain in what has been the worst rioting in the country for over a decade. The unrest comes after a stabbing in Southport, England, that killed 3 young girls.
Windows of this hotel in Rotherham were smashed as anti-immigrant protesters threw stones at the building that has been used to house asylum seekers. They also started fires and clashed with police. Violent demonstrations involving anti-immigration groups have broken out in towns and cities across Britain in what has become the worst rioting in the country for over a decade. Residents here in Blackpool have been left shaken. The unrest comes after a stabbing in Southport that killed 3 young girls on Monday. False information about the suspect's background quickly spread online, fueling anti-Muslim and anti-immigration demonstrations, even after police confirmed the suspect was born in Britain. The violence has prompted hundreds of mosques to step up security. It's a first test for newly elected Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who has promised a firm response.
I think there needs to be the full force of the law, and I think it needs to be swift. What happened in 2011 was that we were able to see individuals who took part in violence, arrested, charged, remanded and convicted very swiftly. Standing arrangements are in place for that, and we will do whatever it takes to ensure that the message is absolutely clear that if you're taking part in this violence, you will regret it and you'll be brought to justice as quickly as possible.
Dozens of arrests have been made, and in Sunderland, where violence hit a peak on Friday, several officers had to be hospitalised.
And back in our region in the Korean peninsula now, the tensions continue to simmer. North Korea says it has deployed 250 new tactical ballistic missile launchers along its front lines, vowing to enhance its nuclear capabilities to defend itself.
This is a picture released by North Korea's state-run news agency on Monday, showing what appears to be the transporter erector launcher vehicles for the Hwasong-11 close-range ballistic missiles. This is a type of tactical missile that the regime has been testing since April 2022, that's known to fly around 110 kilometers. During a ceremony held in Pyongyang, the state media reported that its leader Kim Jong-un announced that some 250 of these new tactical ballistic missile launchers have been handed to frontline units. Each of the 250 new launchers can carry 4 missiles, which means when operated all at once, it could be possible to launch 1,000 missiles. Kim also said the North will soon gain an enhanced level of nuclear capabilities that can defend the regime and deter all types of nuclear threats. In a message towards the U.S., he reiterated that Pyongyang still has a choice of engaging in both dialogue and confrontation with Washington, but said the regime must be thoroughly prepared for confrontation. In response, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a press briefing on Monday that it's closely monitoring the situation by cooperating with the U.S. Kim Jong-un's young daughter Kim Ju-ae, who is seen as her father's heir apparent, was also seen attending the latest event in Pyongyang to mark the deployment of the missile launchers, making it her first public appearance in around 3 months.
On the Olympic Games tonight, Laura Lindemann won a thrilling sprint finish to give Germany gold in the Olympic triathlon mixed relay, outkicking the United States and Britain after highly fancied France was scuppered by a bike crash in the first of the 4 legs. There was a photo finish for second place, with officials initially announcing Britain as runners-up, but minutes later they announced a switch, with the US getting the silver and Britain the bronze. Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And on the road to the White House tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris is making the biggest decision of her 2-week-old presidential campaign as she chooses a running mate and prepares to introduce the new Democratic ticket to voters in several key battleground states this week.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris on the verge of choosing her running mate. She's meeting today with top contenders at her residence in D.C., including popular first-term Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a former prosecutor, Arizona Senator and retired astronaut Mark Kelly, the husband of Gabby Giffords, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a retired school teacher and former congressman.
If Harris wins this election, you will quickly have a Kamala economic crash.
Trump last night rallying in battleground Georgia, hurling personal insults.
She has a very low IQ.
Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, still doing damage control, acknowledging that even some Republicans are disappointed that he's on Trump's ticket.
I actually take their criticism as a badge of honor.
Going so far as to say his name on the ticket doesn't make a difference.
My attitude is it doesn't really care. As much as it doesn't really matter. As much as this is a hit to my ego, people are going to vote primarily for Donald Trump or for Kamala Harris.
Right.
That's the way these things go.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump proposed to debate Kamala Harris on Fox News on the 4th of September. The Harris campaign said Trump is trying to back out of a debate that had been set to run on ABC on the 10th of September. Each camp is now playing a waiting game with accusations flying both ways of unpreparedness and cowardice.
Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage.
Democratic U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris taunted Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump earlier this week after he backed out of a debate with her. Now he has proposed to debate her on Fox News on September 4th. On Truth Social, he said it would take place in Pennsylvania and include an audience. But Harris wants to stick to the debate scheduled to run on ABC later next month. She posted on X Saturday, "It's interesting how anytime, any place becomes one specific time, one specific safe space. I'll be there on September 10th, like he agreed to. I hope to see him there." On Saturday, Trump said on Truth Social that Harris is afraid to do it and that he will see her on September 4th, quote, "or I won't see her at all." Earlier, he said the ABC debate has been terminated in that President Joe Biden will no longer be a participant and because he is in litigation with ABC. The debate over the debate comes after Harris on Friday secured the delegate votes needed to clinch the Democratic U.S. presidential nomination. Party delegates voted virtually this week ahead of the Democratic convention in Chicago later this month. Harris is meeting in person this weekend with the top contenders, vying to become her presidential running mate for November's election. She's expected to make her choice by Monday, ahead of her first public appearance with the new vice presidential nominee on Tuesday in Philadelphia.
Still in the U.S., the National Hurricane Center said Hurricane Debby is expected to slam into the Big Bend region of Florida's Gulf Coast before slowly crossing the state, causing potentially dangerous storm surges and catastrophic flooding.
Tropical storm Debby muscled up into a full-fledged hurricane late Sunday and is expected to continue to strengthen overnight. That's according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center, which expects Debby to hit Florida's Gulf Coast in the Big Bend region by midday on Monday. It forecasts life-threatening conditions, including storm surges up to 10 feet in some areas. As Debby slowly moves north through the week, the storm could bring historic rainfall of between 10 and 20 inches and catastrophic flooding to Georgia and South Carolina. The NHC also said local areas could receive 30 inches of rain by Friday morning. The storm could be likened to 2017's Hurricane Harvey. While Harvey was downgraded into a tropical storm as it moved inland over Texas, it lingered over the state, dumping about 50 inches of rain on Houston. It's rated as one of the wettest storms in U.S. history, having caused more than 100 deaths and $125 billion in damage. Preparing for Debby, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis called up 3,000 National Guard troops and placed most of the state's cities and counties under emergency orders. Mandatory evacuations were ordered in parts of several Gulf Coast counties. The governors of Georgia and South Carolina also declared states of emergency ahead of the storm.
An update on the war in Ukraine now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the nation has finally received its first batch of US-made F-16 fighter jets, quickly adding that more are desperately needed to beat back Russian forces.
Jets are in our sky, and officially today you see them, and it's good that they came and we can use them.
Ukrainian pilots will now be flying in US-made F-16s for operations within the country, said President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday. The long-awaited fighter jets arrived more than 29 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Zelensky said, however, the country still did not have enough jets or pilots. But he noted many soldiers are now undergoing training. It remains unclear how many jets Ukraine received and how much impact they will have on the battlefield. Kiev has long lobbied for the F-16s due to their destructive power and global availability. It currently has an aging fleet of Soviet-era warplanes.
We had hundreds of meetings and talks to strengthen the capabilities of our aviation, to strengthen the capabilities of our air defense system, of our defense forces. We often heard it is impossible as an answer, but we still made our ambition, our defensive need possible. Now this is reality, reality in our skies. F-16s are in Ukraine.
The new jets come equipped with a 20mm cannon and can carry bombs, rockets, and missiles. Russia has been targeting bases that may house the F-16s and vowed to shoot them down.
Let's go in for a very short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A colorful parade of amphibious vehicles cruised Amsterdam's canals in a closing event of a multi-day tour of several Dutch cities. The owners of these unique cars, flying flags from all over Europe, sailed in Amsterdam waters for the last time. As from 2025, they will no longer be allowed into the city due to environmental regulations. The unusual cars could return to Amsterdam if technology improves for them, although not many are aware of such research. This year, it was the Netherlands' turn to organize and the possibility of driving one last time in Amsterdam's famous canals attracted 100 car owners, a bigger group than usual. The event started in Amsterdam and took the amphibious cars to the cities of Monnikendam and Utrecht before finishing back in Amsterdam. The first parade took place in 1987 and has since been hosted by Amsterdam 4 times. And with that, we mark the end of today's bulletin. We will see you again tomorrow with the latest happenings across the globe. Stay tuned as Vinod Varnasurya will join you next with the Nightly Business Report. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.